45 stupid things that accidentally saved people's lives. From the moment we are born, we are taught to be smart. Look both ways before you cross the street. Don't run with scissors. Plan for the future. We are conditioned to believe that survival is a product of intelligence, caution, and making the right choices. We build our lives on a foundation of routines, schedules, and careful decisions, believing that this logical framework will protect us from the chaos of the world. But what if that's all a lie? What if the universe doesn't care about your 5-year plan or your emergency preparedness kit? What if, in a world governed by random chance and brutal chaos, the single greatest survival trait isn't intelligence, but sheer, dumb, glorious incompetence? These are not stories about heroes. They are not tales of quick thinking or brave actions. These are stories about the procrastinators, the slobs, the klutzes, and the fools. The people whose worst habits, dumbest mistakes, and most profound moments of idiocy placed them in the exact right place, at the exact right time, to cheat death. Prepare to have your entire concept of survival of the fittest turned upside down. This is a celebration of survival of the stupidest. The procrastinating accountant. An accountant named Mark had a major report due at 5 p.m. He was a master of procrastination, a black belt in putting things off. He spent the entire afternoon staring at spreadsheets, surfing the internet, and making precisely 17 cups of coffee. 5 p.m. came and went, then 6 p.m. Finally, around 7 p.m., fueled by panic and caffeine, he finished the report. He packed his briefcase and headed home, cursing his own laziness. Had he left on time, his car would have been in the middle of a catastrophic 20-car pileup on the interstate, caused by a tanker truck that jackknifed at precisely 5:25 p.m. His profound inability to manage his time meant he was still at his desk, staring blankly at a wall, when he should have been in a fiery wreck. His life was saved by his own professional incompetence. The unwashed coffee mug. A woman named Sarah worked in a busy downtown office. She had a favorite coffee mug that she never, ever washed. It had developed a sedimentary layer of old coffee sludge at the bottom that she considered seasoning. One morning, her coworker chastised her for it, and, embarrassed, she finally took the mug to the office kitchen for a deep cleaning. It was a monumental task, requiring a Brillo pad, hot water, and 20 minutes of furious scrubbing. While she was in the kitchen, a gas line in the building ruptured, causing a massive explosion that completely destroyed her section of the office. Her desk was flattened. She survived without a scratch because she was in the back of the building, engaged in a long overdue battle with her own terrible hygiene. The vain executive. A high-powered executive named Brenda was notoriously meticulous about her appearance. She was scheduled for an 8 a.m. flight for a crucial business meeting. That morning, she was running late because she could not get one specific curl in her hair to lay perfectly. For a solid 30 minutes, she stood in her bathroom, armed with a curling iron and a can of hairspray, fighting a war of attrition against a single, stubborn lock of hair. Her husband begged her to just go, but she refused to leave until it was perfect. That stubbornness caused her to miss her flight. The plane she was supposed to be on, Flight 93, was hijacked by terrorists on September 11th, 2001. Her life was saved because her vanity was, on that one specific morning, more powerful than her professional ambition. 4. The clumsy intern. A new intern, on his first day, was carrying a tray of coffee to his new boss's office. In a moment of pure, uncoordinated panic, he tripped over his own feet, sending hot coffee splashing all over the pristine white carpet. Mortified, he spent the next 10 minutes on his hands and knees, frantically dabbing at the stain with paper towels. During those 10 minutes, a massive construction crane from the building site next door collapsed, crushing the exact corner of the building where his desk was located. His clumsiness, a trait that he was sure would get him fired, instead saved him from being turned into a pancake. The bad sense of direction. A delivery driver named Frank was legendary for having the worst sense of direction in human history. He could get lost in his own driveway. One day, while trying to find a shortcut, he made a catastrophically wrong turn, ending up on a series of winding rural back roads miles from his destination. He was hopelessly lost. While he was trying to figure out where he was, the major bridge on his original correct route suffered a sudden structural failure and collapsed into the river below, taking dozens of cars with it. Frank's complete inability to navigate his way out of a paper bag meant he was miles away, arguing with his GPS when he should have been at the bottom of a river. The stolen sandwich. A man named Paul worked in an office with a chronic lunch thief. Every day, Paul would bring a delicious, carefully prepared sandwich, and every day, it would be gone from the office fridge by noon. One day, he decided to get revenge. He made his usual sandwich, but this time, he loaded it with an entire bottle of the world's hottest hot sauce. He put it in the fridge and waited. A few hours later, he heard a blood-curdling scream from the break room. His plan had worked. What he didn't expect was that the thief was his boss, who had a severe, undiagnosed allergy to one of the rare peppers in the sauce. The boss went into anaphylactic shock. Paul had to call an ambulance and spent the rest of the day at the hospital. This act of petty culinary revenge meant he missed his usual bus home. That bus was involved in a horrific, fatal accident. He was saved by his own vindictive sandwich. The fear of dentists. A woman had a crippling, debilitating fear of the dentist. She had a severe toothache for weeks, but she refused to make an appointment. The pain became so excruciating that one Tuesday afternoon, she couldn't take it anymore. She left work early, in agony, to go home and load up on painkillers. Her office was on the 101st floor of the North Tower of the World Trade Center. It was September 11th, 2001. Her lifelong phobia, a source of pain and shame, was the one thing that forced her to be out of the building at the exact moment the plane hit. The smoker's break. A factory worker was a heavy smoker. His supervisor was constantly on his case, telling him he was taking too many unauthorized smoke breaks. One afternoon, he ignored his boss's warnings and snuck out the back door for a quick cigarette. While he was outside, a massive piece of machinery inside the factory malfunctioned, sending a multi-ton press crashing down on the exact spot where he should have been standing. His unhealthy, rule-breaking addiction, a habit that was slowly killing him, was the only thing that saved him from a much faster, more gruesome death. The world's worst handyman. A man decided to save money by fixing his own leaky faucet. He had absolutely no idea what he was doing. For 2 hours he struggled, turning a simple drip into a full-blown flood. Water was everywhere. Panicked, he ran out of his apartment to shut off the main water valve in the basement of his building. As he was standing in the basement, soaked and defeated, a drunk driver lost control and plowed directly through his ground-floor living room wall, destroying the couch he would have been sitting on. His complete and utter incompetence as a plumber saved his life. The broken alarm clock. A woman was a stickler for punctuality. She set 3 separate alarms to make sure she was up at 5 a.m. every morning to get to her job at the Pentagon. One night, a power surge fried all of her alarm clocks. She overslept for the first time in her life, waking up in a panic, hours late. As she frantically got ready, she turned on the TV and saw a plane had crashed into the side of the building, into her very section. A simple, random electrical failure had completely derailed her perfect routine and saved her from being at the center of a terrorist attack. The argument over a TV show. A married couple got into a massive, screaming argument over the series finale of a popular TV show. He loved it. She thought it was a complete betrayal of the characters. The fight was so intense that he stormed out of the house to cool off, driving aimlessly for an hour. While he was gone, a massive gas leak in their old furnace caused their house to explode. He came back to find a crater where his home used to be. A stupid, passionate argument over a fictional story was the only reason he wasn't inside when it happened. The pack rat's paradise. An elderly man was a chronic hoarder. His house was a labyrinth of junk with narrow paths carved through towering piles of old newspapers, magazines, and broken appliances. One night, during a powerful earthquake, the house began to collapse. But the man survived. The sheer volume of his hoarded junk acted as a kind of structural reinforcement and cushioning, creating a small, survivable pocket in the debris. The very thing that had made his house a death trap was the one thing that saved him from being crushed within it. The stolen car. A man walked out of his office to find that his car, which he had parked on the street, had been stolen. He was furious. He spent the next 2 hours filing a police report and calling his insurance company. His car was later found, abandoned, and stripped for parts, but the theft meant he wasn't on his usual route home at his usual time. That was the exact time a massive sinkhole opened up in the middle of the main road, swallowing several cars. His misfortune of being a victim of a petty crime saved him from a much larger geological one. The socially awkward employee. An employee named Kevin dreaded office birthday parties. He hated the forced singing, the awkward small talk. One afternoon, his coworkers gathered to celebrate a birthday with a cake in the break room. Kevin, suffering from extreme social anxiety, hid in the bathroom for a solid 15 minutes, waiting for the party to be over. While the entire department was crowded in the break room on the east side of the building, a truck on the street below had a catastrophic tire blowout, sending a huge chunk of debris flying through the window and embedding it in the wall right behind Kevin's empty chair. His social awkwardness was his guardian angel. The failed diet. A man had been on a strict diet for weeks, but his craving for a greasy, deep-fried donut became overwhelming. He felt ashamed, but he couldn't resist. He left his office in the middle of the afternoon and drove 10 miles out of his way to the one donut shop in town that made his favorite kind. As he sat in his car, blissfully enjoying his forbidden treat, he listened to the radio and heard about a massive, multi-vehicle pileup on the freeway overpass he was supposed to have been on. His momentary lapse in willpower, his dietary failure, was his salvation. The cheapskate's detour. A man was so incredibly cheap, he would drive miles out of his way to avoid a $2 toll on the bridge. His friends mocked him for it, pointing out that he spent more on gas than he saved on the toll. One day, while taking his usual ridiculously long detour, that very toll bridge suffered a catastrophic structural failure during rush hour. He heard about it on the radio while he was stuck in traffic on a side street, smugly counting the 8 quarters he had saved. The fear of flying. A man was offered a huge promotion, but it required him to relocate to an office across the country. The only problem was his crippling fear of flying. He agonized over the decision for weeks. He knew he should take the job, but his phobia was too powerful. He turned down the promotion. A month later, the coworker who took the job instead of him was on a routine corporate flight that went down in a storm, killing everyone on board. His irrational fear, a barrier that had held back his career, was the only thing that kept him on the ground and alive. Shout, the world's worst cook. A woman trying to cook dinner for her boyfriend managed to set her kitchen on fire. It wasn't a big fire, but it created a lot of smoke, and the fire alarm went off. The entire apartment building had to be evacuated. As the residents stood outside, grumbling and annoyed at the woman for her culinary incompetence, a powerful, localized microburst of wind tore through the neighborhood, ripping the roof off the building they had all just been forced to leave. Her inability to cook a simple meal saved dozens of lives. The lost keys. A man was about to leave his house when he realized he couldn't find his car keys. He spent the next 25 minutes frantically searching, turning his apartment upside down. He finally found them in the pocket of the pants he was already wearing. Annoyed and late, he rushed out the door. As he pulled out of his driveway, he saw a massive, ancient oak tree from his neighbor's yard crash down on the exact spot where his car had been parked just moments before he would have been sitting in it. His own forgetfulness and stupidity saved him from being crushed. The terrible taste in music. A teenager was driving his friends home, blasting a terrible bass-heavy song at an earth-shattering volume. One of his friends, unable to take it anymore, reached over and turned the radio off. This started a furious argument between the driver and the friend over control of the stereo. The driver was so distracted by the fight that he missed his turn onto the highway on-ramp. As he was making a U-turn, they all watched in horror as a light aircraft, suffering engine failure, crashed directly onto that on-ramp. Their stupid argument over bad music saved their lives. Charles, the compulsive gambler. A man had a serious gambling addiction. The day he got his paycheck, he was supposed to take a train to visit his family. But the lure of the racetrack was too strong. He skipped the train and spent all his money on the horses, losing every penny. As he sat there, broke and full of self-loathing, he learned that the train he was supposed to have been on had derailed in a horrific accident. His personal demon, the addiction that was ruining his life, was the only thing that kept him from being on that train. 22. The Kid's Tantrum. A family was running late for a flight to a vacation resort. As they were going through security, their 5-year-old son had a full-blown world-ending temper tantrum because they wouldn't buy him a candy bar. He threw himself on the floor screaming and crying. It took them nearly 20 minutes to calm him down. By the time they got to the gate, the plane had already left. The parents were furious. Hours later, they learned that the resort they were flying to had been hit by a completely unexpected, devastating tsunami. The tantrum that ruined their vacation also saved their lives. 4. The hypochondriac's panic. A woman was a severe hypochondriac. Every minor ache or cough sent her into a spiral of panic. One morning she woke up with a small, harmless rash on her arm and convinced herself it was a rare, flesh-eating bacteria. She skipped work and rushed to the emergency room, demanding to be seen. The doctors, after running several tests, confirmed it was just a mild allergic reaction. While she was at the hospital, a disgruntled former employee walked into her workplace with a weapon and opened fire. Her irrational health anxiety made her a no-show at her own tragedy. The overly attached pet owner. A man's cat, Chairman Meow, had a habit of climbing trees and getting stuck. One afternoon, the man was about to leave for a weekend trip when he realized the cat was missing. He found him, of course, at the top of a very tall oak tree, refusing to come down. The man spent the next 3 hours trying to coax the cat down, a process that involved a ladder, a can of tuna, and a lot of pleading. This lengthy feline rescue operation caused him to miss his train. That train was the subject of a bomb threat and was stuck on the tracks for 12 hours. He was saved by his codependent relationship with his cat. The failed science experiment. A high school chemistry student was a notoriously bad scientist. He consistently mixed up chemicals and messed up procedures. One day, while trying to perform a simple experiment, he mixed the wrong 2 substances together, creating a cloud of foul-smelling, non-toxic smoke that stunk up the entire science wing. The principal, in an overabundance of caution, evacuated the entire school. As the students were all gathered on the football field, the school's ancient boiler in the basement exploded, leveling the wing of the building they had just been forced to leave. The students' incompetence in chemistry saved the entire school. Thus, the stolen identity. A man had his identity stolen. It was a nightmare. The thief maxed out his credit cards and took out loans in his name, ruining his credit. He had to spend weeks at home, on the phone with banks and credit agencies trying to clear his name. One of the days he was forced to stay home was the day a massive gas explosion occurred in the subway station he used for his daily commute. Right at the time, he would have been there. The criminal who ruined his finances also accidentally saved his life. The laziest firefighter. A firefighter was known for being lazy. While the other firefighters kept their gear neatly packed and ready by the truck, he would always leave one of his boots somewhere in the locker room. When a major fire alarm went off, the entire crew was ready in seconds, but he was hopping around on one foot, frantically searching for his other boot. Annoyed, the fire chief made him stay behind. The crew he was supposed to be with was caught in a deadly flashover event at the fire. His laziness, a trait that made him a terrible firefighter, was the only reason he was still alive. 28. The sports fanatic's ritual. A man was a superstitious sports fan. His team was in the championship, and he had a rigid set of rituals he had to perform for good luck, which included wearing the same unwashed jersey for a month and eating a specific, hard-to-find brand of hot wings before every game. On the day of the final game, he couldn't find his lucky wings anywhere. He spent 2 hours driving all over the city, frantically searching for the right brand. This quest made him late for his flight to the city where the game was being held. The flight crashed on takeoff. The fear of public speaking. An executive was scheduled to give a major presentation at a conference being held on the top floor of a hotel. He had a crippling fear of public speaking. The morning of the presentation, he was so consumed by anxiety that he had a full-blown panic attack in his hotel room and couldn't bring himself to go downstairs. While he was hyperventilating, a fire broke out in the hotel's kitchen and the smoke quickly filled the upper floors, trapping many of the people in the conference room. His phobia kept him safely in his room until firefighters arrived. For Dazank, the bad directions. A tourist couple driving through a remote desert got hopelessly lost. They had missed their turn hours ago. They were low on gas, had no cell service, and were starting to panic. As night fell, they saw a sign for a tiny, run-down motel and decided to stay the night. The next morning, they learned that a massive, unexpected flash flood had swept through the canyon where the official campground they were supposed to be staying at was located, washing everything away. Their complete lack of navigational skill had led them to the one safe place for miles. The Wedding Crasher. A man was supposed to be the best man at his friend's destination wedding. The night before the flight, he went to a wild bachelor party and in a drunken stupor ended up at the wrong airport hotel. He missed the flight, infuriating the groom and the entire wedding party. The charter plane carrying the wedding party crashed in the Caribbean. He was the only one who survived because he was too irresponsible to make it to the flight. The compulsive shopper. A woman had a serious shopping addiction. She was on her way to an important appointment when she passed a shoe store with a flash sale sign in the window. She knew she shouldn't, but she couldn't resist. She told herself she would only be 5 minutes. An hour later, she emerged with 3 new pairs of shoes, having completely missed her appointment. The building where her appointment was located had suffered a major electrical fire, starting in the waiting room where she would have been sitting. The Angry Beekeeper. A man was driving on a rural road when his truck was suddenly swarmed by a massive cloud of angry bees from an overturned apiary truck. Panicked, he slammed on the brakes and tried to wait out the swarm. It took nearly 30 minutes for the bees to disperse. Shaken and with a few stings, he continued on his way. A mile down the road, he came across the wreckage of a head-on collision that had happened just minutes before. The bizarre, random act of being delayed by an apiary disaster saved him from being part of a fatal one. The failed musician. A man's lifelong dream was to be a professional musician. He was terrible. He was on his way to an open mic night, convinced this would be his big break. On the way, his guitar case, which he hadn't latched properly, flew open, and his guitar spilled out onto the street. He spent 10 minutes gathering up his broken instrument and his shattered dreams. That delay caused him to miss being at the cafe when a car lost control and plowed through the front window, right where the stage was set up. His lack of talent saved his life. The Butterfinger. A surgeon was known for having butterfingers. He was constantly dropping things. During a routine operation, he dropped a small critical instrument onto the floor. Protocol dictated that the entire procedure had to be paused while the instrument was retrieved and the area re-sterilized. This created an unexpected 15-minute delay. During that delay, the hospital's main oxygen supply line, which was feeding into the operating room, suffered a catastrophic failure. Had the operation been proceeding on schedule, the patient would have died instantly. The surgeon's clumsiness was the only thing that created the window of time for the failure to occur harmlessly. The obsessive-compulsive checker. A man had severe OCD. His morning routine involved a series of compulsive checking rituals. He had to check if the stove was off 10 times, if the door was locked 10 times, and if his wallet was in his pocket 10 times. This made him chronically late for everything. One morning, his rituals were particularly intense, and he left for work 20 minutes later than usual. This placed him 2 cars behind a major chain reaction accident on the freeway that was caused by a driver who had a sudden medical emergency. His mental illness, a source of daily torment, acted as a life-saving time delay. The overbooked flight. A man got to the airport to find his flight was overbooked. He was furious when the airline bumped him to a later flight despite his protests. He sat at the gate, fuming about the injustice. The flight he was supposed to be on, Pan Am Flight 103, was blown up by a terrorist bomb over Lockerbie, Scotland. He was saved by a bureaucratic inconvenience. Guess, the world's worst spy. During the Cold War, a bumbling, low-level CIA agent was sent on a mission to swap a briefcase with a contact in East Berlin. He got the location wrong and spent 2 hours waiting at the wrong cafe. The cafe where he was supposed to be was raided by the Stasi, who had been tipped off. His incompetence, which should have gotten him fired or killed, was the only thing that saved him from being captured. The food poisoning. A group of friends had planned a big night out. Before going to a concert, they all ate at a cheap taco stand. One of the friends got a violent case of food poisoning and had to be rushed to the hospital. The others, feeling guilty, skipped the concert to stay with him. That night, a fire broke out at the crowded concert venue, leading to a deadly stampede. They all survived because one of them ate a bad burrito. The allergic reaction. A man was on a first date. He wanted to impress the woman, so he lied and said he wasn't allergic to shellfish when she suggested a seafood restaurant. He ate a plate of shrimp, had a severe allergic reaction, and had to be rushed to the emergency room. The date was a disaster. But while they were at the hospital, the valet stand at the restaurant they had just left was the site of a targeted gang shooting. The man he had given his car keys to was killed. His lie saved his life. The lazy paperboy. A paperboy in a small town was known for being lazy. Instead of getting out of his car, he would just slow down and try to throw the newspaper onto the porch from the street. He was terrible at it. One morning, he made a particularly bad throw, and the newspaper landed on the roof. Annoyed, he had to get out, find a ladder, and climb up to retrieve it. While he was on the roof, a speeding car, whose driver had fallen asleep at the wheel, careened off the road and smashed directly into his car, which he had left running in the street. The horrible boss. An employee had a tyrannical, horrible boss who would demand she stay late for the most pointless tasks. One evening, the boss insisted she stay 2 extra hours to reformat a meaningless report that no one would ever read. She was furious, but she complied. That 2-hour delay meant she missed being on the commuter train that derailed during her usual travel time. She was saved by the petty cruelty of her terrible boss. The broken shoelace. A man was walking down a busy city street when his shoelace broke. He grumbled, knelt down to try and tie the tattered ends together, a process which took him about 30 seconds. In that brief moment, a city bus jumped the curb and plowed down the sidewalk, stopping just feet from where he was kneeling. The simple, random act of a cheap shoelace failing was the only thing that prevented him from being directly in the bus's path. The stubborn dog. An elderly woman was taking her stubborn old bulldog for a walk. The dog, as it often did, decided it was done walking and plopped down in the middle of the sidewalk, refusing to move. The woman spent 5 minutes pleading, pulling, and trying to get the 200-pound animal to budge. While they were engaged in this battle of wills, a large chunk of facade from the building they were about to walk past broke off and crashed onto the sidewalk. The dog's stubbornness saved them both. The wrong lottery numbers. And finally, a man who played the same lottery numbers every week for 20 years. They were a combination of family birthdays and anniversaries. One week, the store clerk made a mistake and printed him a ticket with a completely random set of numbers. The man was angry but didn't want to make a fuss, so he took the ticket. That night, a fire started by faulty wiring burned his house to the ground. He lost everything. The next morning, sitting in a shelter, he remembered the ticket. The clerk's mistake, the random set of numbers, had won the multi-million-dollar jackpot. It was the stupidest, luckiest, and most perfectly timed accident of his entire life. So what's the moral here? That you should be lazy, clumsy, and incompetent? Of course not. But these stories are a powerful, hilarious reminder that we live in a world governed by forces far beyond our control. Our best-laid plans are fragile, and our smartest choices are often meaningless in the face of random, chaotic chance. These people are living proof that sometimes the universe has a dark, twisted sense of humor. They didn't survive because they were fit, or smart, or prepared. They survived because of a flaw, a mistake, a moment of pure, unadulterated stupidity. They are the accidental survivors, the unwitting heroes of their own incompetence. Subscribe if you now believe that your own worst habits might just be your best bodyguards.